Welcome to Vision for Life Radio, where faith and sports collide. Featuring author, pastor, husband, and father, Dr. Roger Patterson. The mission of Vision for Life Radio is to harness the influence of the Christian athlete and coach as a significant and positive role model and voice in American culture today. You'll hear their stories as we highlight their lives and encourage their influence. From the Westview Baptist Studios in Houston, Texas, this is Vision for Life Radio with Dr. Roger Patterson.
Welcome to Vision for Life Radio, where faith and sports collide. I'm here, Roger Patterson, here at our Crosspoint Church studio with Pastor Tim Yeager, our lead student pastor. We love getting together, talking sports weekly, and also digging in deep about our faith. And we appreciate you joining us. Today we have a special guest, friend of the show. This is probably your third or fourth time joining us. It's Spencer Tillman. He is an OU Sooner. Sick 'em, go Bears. He is a former Oiler and San Francisco 49er. He's a Fox Sports 1 analyst, and he is all things football. He is on a local show here in Houston. Is it Inside the Game? Is that right, on ABC 13?
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's
every
right,
Sunday night, breaking down the Houston Texans in an awesome way and doing the X's and O's. And, man, brother, God bless you. Thanks for joining us today.
Pastor, good to be here. And, Tim, good to hear your voice as well. Looking forward to the time.
Hey, let's talk Texans Patriots. This podcast drops on a Wednesday. It's Monday midday as we're doing this recording. They just beat the Patriots. The Texans just beat the Patriots last night, 28-22 at NRG. You were on TV breaking that down last night. What did you see?
Well, it was a lot. I think the score was not necessarily indicative of the dominance I think the Texans enjoyed for much of that game. And I think Tom Brady being Tom Brady, although he's still getting up in age, he's obviously diminishing some talent, but to be able to close that gap in such a relatively short period of time, shorthanded on offense, with really only one real tool, a real threat in Edelman, I thought it was impressive. But the Texans are really in a unique spot right now. Romeo Crennel, with one of his defensive backs back in the mix, was able to kind of what we call bracket. That's where you put something around a person on either side to kind of limit their production. And so Edelman was kind of kept in check a little bit. And without anybody else, I think that made it easier to defend them. So they were one-dimensional. And you're an aging quarterback, an offense that's still struggling, no Gronkowski, just so many weapons that we've come used to seeing them exploit, not available to them now. And the Texans were able to take advantage of that. They populated the line of scrimmage, put a bunch of bodies around it, and then the 41-year-old quarterback can only do so much. He did have one little 13-yard little scamper, but other than that, they contained him and frustrated him with coverage. So it was a total domination, I think, by the Texans. And the Patriots have dropped to two in a row, looks like now, against the Ravens and now the Texans. Is it and they've known for their defense. So is part of this, and their defense is breaking down as well, or is it just a lack of offensive production? I think it was a combination of things, and that's a great way of looking at it, whether it was offensive production breaking down or what. I think it came down to this. I think it's about being able to stretch the field both vertically and horizontally. In other words, you can come out in a stretch formation, but if your personnel isn't really going to make them do anything, they'll figure out that you've got a faux offense. But the Texans, when they do it, it could be Will Fuller. It could be DeAndre Hopkins. It could be Duke Johnson coming out of the backfield. So now you've got the total width of the field being legitimately stretched. And so a defense has to honor that. And I think that's kind of what the elixir was for the Texans, and what put stress on what heretofore was a pretty solid, in fact, probably in a lot of people's minds, a generational defense. But they got exposed a little bit. And all defenses have weaknesses. But when you have those many offensive assets, got a bunch of weaknesses.
You had Deshaun Watson reading that defense big time last night. When they would play zone, he would just drop it off in the, right in that soft spot between those linebackers. When they were playing man and they're taking Hopkins out, he's going to say, all right, let me go to Fuller. And I love they go deep to Fuller. He drops it in the end zone. Very next play, they go deep again and hit with Kenny Stills for a touchdown on that man coverage on the outside.
And I think you get that's Pastor, you're doing a real good job of breaking this thing down, because that's exactly what you're doing. See, now inside of that, that's what we call the show Inside the Game. Inside of that is, how are you able to go deep? Well, the one thing that Bill O'Brien did, he did not succumb to having, Titus Howard on the injured reserve list. So now you've got Clark outside of him. That was a potential threat. He could have succumbed to that and tried to keep protection inside. But in order to get those players downfield, it's going to take you 4.5 seconds or more past the average amount of time it takes the average play, which subjects your quarterback to being hit. But he didn't. You did that without compromising their protection. So being able to get those receivers downfield where you can make those great plays shows you a little bit about Bill's confidence in his offensive line and ability to protect his quarterback. And when you got guys running in man coverage, their back is to the quarterback, and that means they can't see where he's coming. So he can pull the ball down and go get him 14 yards if he needs to.
Flip the side of the ball. Our defense, I mean, you've got a lot of changes on the defensive line with Watt out, Clowney being traded. Martin comes in, and I remember when the trade happened, they were talking about this guy Martin. Oh, he's trash. He's this and the other. This guy was blowing it up on the edge with his pass rush. I mean, he was blowing past that right tackle. I mean, big time, and getting to the quarterback, getting hits. I mean, they were getting to Brady, but you also then have a reinforced secondary. You got some guys getting healthy. They're spying the running back with a corner versus a linebacker. Talk about the Texans defense and where you see it going the rest of the way.
Well, there's a new dimension that's kind of been inserted in there, that's speed and quickness. Now, Brendan Scarlett was out of the game. He's got an injury situation. So you bring in a guy who, and you alluded to this, people thought he was just more of a spare part. And I think, Jacob Martin is more than a spare part. He is an unbelievably gifted, athletic guy who's able to dip and bend the corner and get that shoulder with the rip technique to get to the quarterback. He did that a couple of times yesterday. And this is the second week in a row where he's registered a sack. So he's been productive. He's, once again, more than just a spare part. So now you got the speed element. You move a Minihue down inside. He's got length and strength inside. So for those people who are anchoring down for a reader and just bowing their shoulders to deal with that, now you got to deal with length and speed too. So you got a toolbox guy. You got a guy that's got multiple weapons in his arsenal of moves inside. He's not just going to be a bull rusher. So now all of a sudden you're looking at this team morph into something a little bit more than what they were with JJ in there, and it's causing teams problems. So I think it's an asset. You add that with Romeo Crennel, who can give you so much with the 3-4 front just to begin with. I mean, because that's what the whole reason behind the 3-4 is. It creates flexibility. Sure. You're not quite sure where the pressure is going to come from. So it looks like it's inviting to run against it because those guards are uncovered. But when you put two linebackers, Bernard McKinney being one of them, big, heavy guys that can take on blockers, those run fits get really, really full of integrity with all of that manhood in there. And all of a sudden, they're not as porous as they look pre-snap.
So Texans are sitting a game ahead of the Titans right now, but 2 of the next 4 games to wrap up the season is going to be against Tennessee Titans. Tim Yeager across from me, he's an Aggie, and so he's excited about his boy Tannehill playing a little quarterback there in Nashville. But do you think Texans run away with it? They're in the driver's seat. They're a game ahead of the Titans, but do they run away with it?
Yeah, I was doing some radio earlier, and the question was, and Mark Vandermeer, the voice of the Texans, kind of borrowed my phrase. He said, I'm going to borrow your phrase, Spencer. He said, how well can they run with a full cup of success? And that's really what the issue is. The issue is, okay, so now you've done something you haven't done before, at least under Bill O'Brien, and that's been able to beat a team that's a perennial favorite to always play for the Super Bowl or be in the driver's seat at some given point. So now how do you handle that? I subscribe to a snap and clear mentality. It's kind of like the old Kipler If poem. When you can meet victory and defeat and treat those imposters the same, that's how you approach it. It doesn't really matter. I think the greatest lessons I've always learned have come when on the heels of a loss, and it's not so much a victory. So if you can take that mindset and let that affect how you prepare, or ultimately not let victory affect how you prepare, that is to say, do less than you were doing before, you're going to be okay. And I think that's where the Texans are right now. Only time will tell exactly how they manage that process, but that crisis will certainly expose who you are at that given point.
Well, and here's the thing, right? As a fan, and I'm a fan first when it comes to my Texans, I don't want to be too critical of them and get too high with them. But, I look back and I go, okay, great, we beat the Pats yesterday. And you've done that twice in their history. But, man, we just got beat up and down the field against the Ravens the previous week. Is it just because the Ravens are that much better, or were we unprepared? Or because I'm like, I expected that, and that's my frustration, is because we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. Are we? I know we won last night. Are we heading in the right direction?
Mm-hmm. I think you're headed in the right direction. The Texans are, but let me just kind of reverse engineer what's happening with the Ravens. The Ravens are more talented team than most people. Everybody's lifting them up right now. But the bottom line is this: in the off season, I usually make about 15, 16 trips to universities around the country for various reasons, just kind of get to know coaches and so forth. At about 9 of those stops, I saw people who were associated with the Ravens. And what the Ravens were trying to do was get a beat on how to fully exploit the talent of Lamar Jackson, right? We knew what this guy was able to do at Louisville. He was a gifted, talented guy, won the Heisman Trophy,
right.
Was a Lombardi finalist and all that stuff. But there are very few coaches that are willing to fully use those gifts and talents. Usually what you find is just the opposite, Pastor. They try to shoehorn them into a pro-style system. And that's the problem. A good coach, a real coach, an authentic coach, looks at that suite of skill set and say, hey, how can we then coach this guy up to maximize those gifts and talents? It's like, to me, it's very biblical. Train up a child in the way that they should go. When they're old, they won't depart. What are those inclinations? What are those gifts? What are those talents? And so as a coach, like a parent, we observe those and then steer that person in that direction. And it may require finding coaches who can coach that. If not, let's get on the road in the offseason and go figure it out. So now you've got a juggernaut. They are basically the 2000 Ravens, only with talent. That Ravens team that won the Super Bowl then, they had Trent Dilfer and Jamal Lewis and then Shannon Sharp. That's all they had on offense. Everybody knows about Ray Lewis and all that. But they're basically the 2000 group with an offense now. That's what they are.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's incredible. So let's pick your tell us who you see in the Super Bowl. Then we'll get to some college football.
Well, listen, I'm going to be biased here. I think the Texans have an outside chance. I think there's going to be a little sneaky thing that takes place with one J.J. Watt. I think he's ultimately, this is just my own personal opinion, sitting on the board at Methodist Hospital, I've talked to some doctors about possibility and probability of people coming back from certain injuries, and my gut tells me that he may be available. If they get to that first round of playoffs, he may be available, and that's just me talking to you and your podcast audience. There's an outside chance there, and just even the specter of that could affect preparation for people. So that can be a good thing. And coaches don't mind that news getting out there.
Well, we'll be happy to help drop that rumor and get the word out.
And then who do you think comes out of the NFC?
I don't know. I mean, 49ers look good. I think that they possibly could do it. It all comes down to offense, to defense. Defense wins championships. That's not just a cliche. You go back and look, only 6 times in the history of the Super Bowl has a lower rated defensive team won the Super Bowl. That is to say, you can have an average offense and win the Super Bowl, i.e. those 2000 Ravens, but you cannot have an average defense and win. So when you look at what they're doing in San Francisco on defense, they're up there, top tier defense, but they've got enough offense, quality offense, to be successful as well. So I like them just as much as anybody.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, guys, y'all are listening to Vision for Life Radio, and we're on the phone with Spencer Tillman. Spencer, let's transition to college football. Okay, so got a Baylor guy, across the table from me.
I got my hat on, baby.
Yeah, he's in his green. We know that you played for OU, and I'm guessing that both of y'all are pretty big LSU fans this weekend if you want a chance to get into that college football playoff. And so with the most likely scenario, I would say LSU will take care of business beating Georgia this weekend. And so that 4th spot in the college football playoff really comes down to Utah and the Oklahoma Baylor winner. And so it's kind of this week where, we're waiting for those championship games, but we want to start making the cases on who and start the conversation on who has the better playoff resume. And so I guess from your wisdom, what can you see about this Big 12 versus Pac-12 debate of winner Baylor OU versus most likely if Utah can take care of business versus Oregon? Where do you see in the resume versus Big 12 and Pac-12?
Well, here's the deal. As an analyst, and I'm going to speak big picture here and try to do this really quickly. I operate from the premise that the college football field is the landscape is flat. Thomas Friedman wrote that book, The World is Flat, really as a clarion call to people to understand that now information technology allows people from the far reaches of the world to be able to collaborate and compete if they have access to that technology. So I think college football really mirrors what's happening in the broader context of society. anybody can beat you on any given day. Now, that said, there are situations going back a few years ago when Nebraska left the Big 12, even before you got A&M, Texas no longer playing one another. I think that affected the conference in such a way where the perception of it is weaker. So whether you are Baylor or Oklahoma, anybody that's going to represent that, even though you have a true round robin where everybody plays one another, in some cases, if it's a Baylor, or whomever it is, you have the chance of double jeopardy. You can end up playing them twice in the championship game and, of course, during the regular season. The bottom line is you're not going to look as strong if you don't have those other teams in there. Yeah. When Nebraska left and those others, that weakened the conference. And so you have those tectonic shift that comes in. And so let me just kind of set that stage. And quickly, I just think the Big 12 conference took a hit. And I do believe that. And I love Baylor. Matt, I'm on record. If you go back and check my Twitter account, you'll see we were singing their praises before it became popular to do. We had one of their games earlier this year, and I'm just in love with them. Brewer's an underrated quarterback, I believe. They have they've got a lot of guys on that staff that got NFL experience, so they can win any type of way if they need to. They can play small ball or they can play big boy ball if they want to. So I just like that flexibility. And so I like Baylor. I think Oklahoma has a savant for an offensive coordinator, though, in Lincoln Riley. And I'm just going to give him the edge, man, simply because what I know about him and Jalen Hurts, obviously he's a difference maker.
Hey, I was at that game, that Baylor OU game, and we were just so fired up. We're watching.
Should have won it, man. Should have won it.
Hey, I mean, it was theirs to take. Yeah. Should have won it. And the last series of the first half, you have, OU figured it out. And they were hitting them in the flats. They were, either you're trying to contain Hurts, and you're doing it with a linebacker. They needed to take a lesson out of Romeo Cornell last night and put a DB on that. And then they were hitting him in the flat, and they were just going and going. And so then they figured that out, and defense could not get off the field the second half, and it just kept happening. And then when the offense got on there, it was 3 and out over and over again. So major game time improvement. So let's talk about this upcoming Big 12 championship. And you're an OU Sooner. You've got some real bias there, although he's just been saying he loves Baylor. I don't know if I believe him this week. Check my Twitter account.
No, listen, I'm an analyst first and foremost. I say what I see. That's what I do.
I know, I'm teasing. Folks, you can check his Twitter account at Spencer Tillman, by the way. But seriously, break it down, right? I mean, you got a great defense at Baylor with Mills at that safety position, Lynch on that D line. I mean, they're playing some ball, but I think OU had them figured out. I don't know that Baylor can beat them.
I will tell you this: the axiom that it's tough to beat somebody twice is true. Right. It's especially true when you have coaches who are of the ilk that this coaching staff at Baylor is. And I think it's going to be much, much more difficult than people realize. I think if you would listen to something that I think Mike Gundy put out there when asked about Oklahoma and what makes them unique or whatever, the bottom line is this. The ability to have a quarterback who is primarily a rusher first, have numbers in the throw game that are on par with the 2 previous Heisman Trophy winners, should cause pause and cause people to think about why that is the case. And Mike Gundy, as a former quarterback himself, head coach now, he's a great schemer. I've been around him a lot and know how and appreciate how he approaches the game. He broke down some numbers and just went down in this interview session, and he just started arbitrarily talking. And these aren't specific numbers, but they went something like this: 140, 153, 112, 105, 180. And what they were was what appeared to be an arbitrary list of the amount of times the quarterbacks that ran the ball in the wishbone and running days at Oklahoma, the J.C. Watts, the Steve Davis, and so forth. So what he was trying to make, he says, who do you think the 180 belongs to? The 180 belongs to Jalen Hurts. Wow. Gentlemen, they're basically a triple option attack disguised as a spread formation. So what do? You take him away, or at least minimize them. In the throw game, he's probably going to become more of a liability. And I believe that because those 2 quarterbacks that won Heisman trophies, Murray and Mayfield, are eminently more accurate than Jalen Hurts is as a thrower. So what do you need to do? Invite him to run the football or to throw the football and not run the football. So there are ways that you can technically do that, and I guarantee you Matt Rule understands that. And he probably understood it then, but, again, there's ebb and flow in the course of games, and you have to be prepared for that. And sometimes guys who are challenged with going out and executing your plan don't necessarily always perform at the highest level. So there's a human element in it as well. But all things being equal, if you have that database, that knowledge of what is, and then how to adjust, and have a past experience of having lost in the game you probably should have won, I think that bodes well for Baylor at a second opportunity. So I think it's a toss-up in my opinion.
Well, I hope you're right.
Well, I don't know if I hope I'm right, but I think my analyst
what you see,
says,
yeah.
That's what I see. That's what I see.
Yeah, and for both of those teams, you just got to take care of business and then see how things shake out. But on the other side of things, I think the team that really no one really knows about, especially here in Houston Central Time, it's hard to stay up late and watch those Pac-12 after dark games. And so you've called a Utah game, correct, this season?
Yep, called a couple of them. Yeah,
couple of them. Okay, so what I think no one really knows about is Utah's rise. Just they've had a great season, and they were upset in Week 4 by USC, but ever since then they have just been on a rampage. Really, they've won 8 games in a row, and really all of them by large margin too, except for a close win versus Washington. And so, tell us a little of what you see on Utah, because I'm not sure a lot of people know exactly what they're seeing in a Utes team this year.
Well, they're a great coach team. Kyle Whittingham, their head coach and defensive mind is sharp as a tack. Now, he is a kind of an old school guy in this regard. He's a tenured. He might maybe the oldest. Maybe he's at the top of the list. I know he's certainly in the top 3 of longest tenured coaches in the FBS. But he is a defensive-minded guy. I like him because Andy Ludwig, his offensive coordinator, and I have had good discussions about this. Andy is kind of an open-minded guy. He wants to do a lot more. He has a quarterback in Huntley that's able to do more. But Kyle Whittingham says, you know what? We're going to anchor down with the Nye and all those guys up front, and we're going to play defense. That's what we do here at Utah. We know who we are. We're going to play this complementary style of football and win games that way. Now, at some point in time, because of the situation that we're in right now as we talk about this podcast, it is a beauty contest. Yeah. It is about how many points you can score, how many people you can impress, and then ultimately what I call the element of recency. What you see last, you'll tend to remember most. Yeah. And so those people that go in there and decide who's going to be in or not are going to have to deal with that. And then more importantly, they're going to have to deal with this true fact about college football. Currency of our game is tradition. Now, that said, can they put their blinders on and adjudicate this the way that it should be? Or will it be another repeat of 2014, 12, somewhere around there, 14, I think it was, when on that final weekend you had Ohio State leapfrogging Baylor and TCU, who were white hot at that time. Right. And the only tenable reason for why that happened was because they were the Ohio State University. Now, once again, I think it's ironic that you have Baylor in the mix, or at least could affect it in some way. I think that's really interesting. But I think this Utah team is going to be in that situation. If Oklahoma wins, Utah wins, who gets in? I think both will be champions, but will the prestige and historic place of the blue-collar Oklahoma team allow them to leapfrog? I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen this year because I think Utah has a stronger schedule.
We're talking to Spencer Tillman, college football analyst, first and foremost, more than an OU fan. I'm going to keep giving you some fun with that. Hey, let's talk about your work with the Lombardi Awards. You've been working with them for a number of years now. What are you doing with them? What's going on there, and how do people get involved in what's happening?
Yeah, we're going through a bit of a transition now, which is a fun thing for us because anytime you're growing something, you're going to have to go through a period of examination and to find out what works. And we are expanding our digital platform and doing a lot with that, working with some great sponsors in the past. We've worked with Toyota, Deloitte, and others, and we're going to scale those things and do more. Hopefully, I really can't say right now, but there's somebody else that's really interested in doing something with it on the auto side. We'll see how that plays out in the next 6 to 7 days or so. But it's going to be a big deal. If you give us 5 more years, because of the research that we put into this, working hand in hand with Gallup, we brought them in and spent a ton of money and resources working with the Gallup folks. Jim Clifton and all those people out of D.C. did a fantastic job in helping us. We will be nibbling at the heels of the Heisman in terms of scale because of the model that we're able to build. It's a very robust model. The brand arches over beyond just the white lines of what happens in the collegiate space, but over into the NFL. It's the same Lombardi, right? In fact, to be able to leverage that in a way that is unique, no other brand can do that. Our award has been shifted a little bit. It's now the emblem of or reflection of the image and likeness of Vince Lombardi. It's the only honor that has his likeness, including the Super Bowl, which we know that is the Tiffany Trophy. But this is the only award that bears the likeness of Vince Lombardi. So it's a very powerful concept there that marries into our overarching plan. We're going to do an all-digital platform this year. We'll be announcing the winner live from halftime at the national championship game. So there's a lot of fun things that'll be going on. And then we'll dial it back next year and come back with some physical presence. But look for a model shift to be changing as well. Houston will always be home for this award. And things work out, we'll probably find a way to keep the other award, too, for the interior lineman. But we're about growth. And hopefully, again, presence will always be in Houston. But we hope to be able to move from city to city, much like the Super Bowl does, because it is a national honor. We're proudful of it, but the growth for us is doing things on a global scale.
Yeah, you got to make some shifts. And you and I were talking about that back in 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. You were saying you were doing the work, and you were saying that we're making these investments, and ultimately your goal, I think you even articulated then, was we want to get it as significant as or even bigger than the Heisman Trophy Award.
That's right. That's right.
Exciting. That's exciting.
Cool. Yeah, the infrastructure was put in place a while back, and again, you have to. The timing is right. It's like anything, Pastor. When you make a move that's significant, there are a lot of other factors that are below the surface all the time, sometimes that people don't really see, but you have to navigate those and then be ready to sprint when it's time to move. But all in due time. Though the vision tarry, wait for it, and in the end it shall speak and shall not lie.
Amen. Hey, well, that's how vision works, right? Because God shows. We talk a lot about this, and I try to communicate this to the church. Look, God, he shows us something, and then we got to start walking. Mm-hmm. But the walking is cloudy.
That's right.
And then at some point there's a parting of that cloud, and the clarity comes sometimes just in a moment, man, and it's so cool. And you're like, okay, here it is. And then, as you said, you got to sprint towards it.
Yeah, you do. And I think the test, if you will, or the challenge is, how well do you run while it is cloudy? How well do you navigate? I think it was Epictetus that said the crisis doesn't make the person, it merely exposes who they are. And usually when we're in the throes of pursuing something, that particular challenge or crisis, we don't learn a lot right then because we've just been exposed. We're still stunned. We're still kind of drunk a little bit by the circumstances. But when you go through that and you begin the process of refining and shaping and changing things, that's where the growth takes place. And then there will be another test, another challenge down the road. And when you see that one and how you perform in it, then that's when you know growth is taking place. So, I stand always on tiptoes of anticipation, waiting for that next challenge because I know that I'm going to be better. My head's always on a swivel, trying to get to that next level. And I basically learned to come expect challenge. Because if you don't have a resistance, that's one of the 4 pillars of a great athlete, right? You got to have health, you got to have nutrition, hydration, rest and recovery, and resistance training. Resistance training is that last one. So a form of that is trial, challenge, and as book of James talks about. Right. In this life, you will have those, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can expect to be strengthened as a result of it.
That's good. I appreciate you. Let me just start with this, just to say how much I appreciate your willingness to come. Spencer is going to be our keynote speaker at our Casa El Buen Samaritano Gala in late February of 2020. And Brian, I appreciate you doing that. That's the last free clinic in the city of Houston, and it's an awesome deal. What we're seeing God do with that. So thank you for your willingness to come and do that. But here's the point I'm making. You're busy, man. You're on TV last night. You're on the radio today. You're on podcast today. You were where were you? What game were you calling this past weekend? Was Washington State, right?
Washington State, then Stanford, Notre Dame on Saturday. So that was Friday, and then we jetted down to NorCal for that one.
Man, so my point is, you're busy, and a lot of guys who listen to this are themselves busy. But how do you stay grounded, and what are your fundamentals of your walk with Jesus so that you can just continue to grow and be the man God's called you to be?
Well, I approach it the way Nehemiah did. When the crisis arises, and even when you don't think there's a crisis, I send up these arrow prayers. I mean, they are constantly going up, and I'm beseeching the Lord for guidance and direction. And so I pray without ceasing. And that that scriptural passage really didn't mean a whole lot to me until I started trying to tackle big things. But I find myself engaged in prayer all the time. I'm communing with the Lord. And so for me, if I miss a day where I don't have that 20 minutes of solid time where I'm alone, it's not that huge of a deal, because I'm telling you, I'm getting it maybe an hour later in the day, or 10 minutes or 5 minutes, wherever it happens. I am constant communion with God, man. And so that's the part of it for me. I don't get really locked down into it's great to have form and structure and order, and I do have that a great deal, but also I do believe the arbitrariness of life dictates that we commune and walk with him all the time.
So when you're tackling big things, you're just constantly saying, okay, Lord, open the door here, give me favor here, God, go before me here, give me wisdom here.
Absolutely. And I look at the way, nevertheless, the foundation of God, that sure, having this seal, the Lord knows those who are his own and that I love him. And that sentiment is something that I take as well. Yeah. How do you know that I'm connected with him? Because his seal is on me, man. You walk in wherever I go, you're going to find something that gives you the indication. What was the old entreat we used to say? If you were arrested for being a Christian, could they find enough evidence to convict you? Yeah. When they listen to your speech, when they look in your car, when they look at your credit card balance sheet, when they look at the things you spend your money on, is there evidence to see that God has impacted your life in a profound way? As I turn around in my office as we're talking on this podcast today, I'm looking back at some of the people who have impacted my life, and I see nothing but believers. And there are people who perhaps may have struggled at some point in time in their life, but there are people who have been on that path and who are on that path to knowing the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So for me, it's about just staying in the pocket, as my brother says. My brother's a musician, and then he says, when you're in the pocket, and in the pocket for a musician means you're on that rhythm and you feel it. Whatever it is, you feel where you're supposed to be. You can even play music you've never, ever played before, or sit in with other artists you've never sat with before. When you're in the pocket, you know that you're in that spot, that suite, we call it.
That's good. That's good. It just syncs up, man. It just syncs up. So, well, folks, you can follow Spencer Tillman on Twitter at Spence Tillman. Pray for him. He's got a lot going on. They're tackling some big things that matter and make a difference. And, brother, it's so good to visit with you. Look forward to some time with you in February at our gala. And if anything we can ever do for you, we look forward to doing that ourselves.
Bet. Love you, mean it. You guys take care. Always a pleasure.
God bless you, brother. This is Vision for Life Radio, where faith and sports collide.
Searching Out Opportunity, Part 1. This is Roger Patterson with a Minute of Vision for Life. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is how opportunity creates growth in my life. When God has grown me the most, it's been through opportunity. Doors open, and opportunity presents itself, and that's when I need to know where to set my foot. Proverbs 25:2 states, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings." There's an old poker term called playing it close to the vest. The idea is that the poker player doesn't want to reveal the hand he's holding, so he pulls his cards just a little bit closer. Sometimes I feel that God does that. So often in our lives, when opportunity presents itself, we're so eager to get from point A to point B that we fail to miss the moments between the destinations. I believe that God is just as interested in the process and journey between these destinations as where we end up. I want to invite you to search out His leading in a community of friends. Come to one of our 2 Interloop locations and find out more at visionforlife.org. That's visionforlife.org.
All right, welcome back to Vision for Life Radio. We are live with our reporter on campus, your son, my friend, Brady Patterson. Brady, what's up, man?
Not much. Just got done with class.
It's Monday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's the worst.
You can follow Brady on Twitter at BJPatterson15. He needs some followers, so follow him.
Yeah, we've been telling him to get his Twitter game up, so hopefully he will. All right, Brady, Baylor, OU. I remember we talked to you, what was that, maybe 4 weeks ago?
About 4 weeks out.
Yeah. About 4 weeks ago. Was it before the Baylor OU game? I think it was, or maybe a week or two out from Baylor OU, kind of seeing that was coming up.
It was
a big
before
game.
TCU. He said, we'll beat TCU. We probably won't beat OU. We will beat Texas, and then we'll meet OU again in the championship. That's what you nailed it.
He predicted it. I remember asking you, is Baylor the best team in the Big 12? And you were hesitant. You're like, well, the rankings say otherwise. OU's ahead of us. And sure enough, OU won a nail biter. Probably shouldn't have won in that game in Waco. What do you remember about that game? What do you remember just about the game in general, and then how you felt afterwards?
I was really surprised with how well we did in the first half. Like, we were up by 21, I think, after coming into the second half. Everybody's just surprised. Like, we're like, oh, maybe we'll actually win this one. Like, nobody expected it. Everybody came in and was like, oh, we're probably going to lose. Like, if we win, that'll be insane, though. And then just got really disappointed. Came back and they beat us. Like, it was awful play calling, awful play, but on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, that second half was tough. They came back and
took it from us, so yeah.
Yeah, so is your confidence level higher knowing that y'all played them really well and had a chance, or is your confidence level lower?
I did not expect us to play that well at all, like, in the first game. So I think as long as we correct those mistakes we had in the second game, better play calling, I think we actually have a decent chance to win.
Decent chance. All right, so you're feeling pretty good about this Saturday.
He's going.
You're going. Hey. Yeah, you were telling me yesterday at church about the ticket situation. Tell us a little about that donor and the student ticket.
Yeah, so there's a big issue with the student tickets. Like, not enough students, tickets were bought by the school or given to the schools. So everybody's just like rushing to get tickets, and then the website crashed online. So there's a big problem. Wow. But there was a donor who bought like 2,000 tickets and gave them to students and stuff. Just gave them to the student union and sold them to students.
It was Chip.
Really saved us a lot of money because the tickets are like expensive for, like, if you buy one stuff up or something like that. But,
he said saved us a lot of money. Saved my parents a lot of money. Right?
Conspiracy theory. It was Chip Gaines.
Maybe Joanna.
Or maybe Joanna. Yeah, that's probably right. All right, so Baylor OU this Saturday, AT&T Stadium, 11 a.m. You'll be there. Your friends will be there. Going to get a little rowdy. Answer this question for me. Baylor wins if?
I think Baylor wins if the defense plays like we played first half of that game is how we played all year.
Yeah.
Like we saw in the game against Kansas this weekend, just absolutely dominated, held them Kansas like 6 points through the whole game. It was pretty impressive. As long as we play like that and we don't get spread out like we did in the last OU game where Hurts just did anything he wanted to us in the second half, I think that's what we'll have to do to win.
Yeah.
So you got to isolate Jalen Hurts and contain his run and make him pass. Is that right?
Yeah, he's a good passer. Our secondary is really good. So as long as we can contain him and keep him from just like getting out of the pocket and just making plays, I think we have a chance.
Yeah, man. What if Baylor pulls this thing out? And then you're talking about the college football playoff and trying to squeeze into that number 4 spot. After the game, you need to be watching LSU, Georgia.
And you need to be the Tigers
for the Tigers.
Yeah.
LSU has to be Georgia. And then you're going to be watching late night Utah, Oregon. And if Utah loses against Oregon, then
it's wide open.
It's wide open for the winner of the Big 12 to get that 4th and final playoff spot. And so
I don't know how Utah is above us. Like, they're one loss. It's the only ranked team. They played the USC. Like, he's not even that good of a team this year.
Yeah.
So I think we should be ahead of them, honestly, but we'll see.
Yeah.
He's not biased.
No bias from the Baylor student at all. That would be fun. That would be fun. So on campus, what's the vibe there in Waco?
I mean, we're just excited just because, like, football team, like, 2 years ago was 1-11. Turning back to 11-1 in the regular season after 2 years is pretty insane. They were just, like, loving to go to the games. All the other sports are doing really well right now. Women's volleyball, like, in basketball, just doing really well. So
yeah.
Everybody's excited about the other sports right now.
Man, it's been cool to watch. I'm an Aggie, and I mean I don't have any ill will towards Baylor at all. But to watch what Coach Rule has done to that program, turning it around from 1-11 to now 11-1, is absolutely incredible. And I hear good things about him. What do you know about Coach Rule?
What I've heard is just like a really good leader. Created a good culture with the team after like the whole Art Browse and like really turned it around. And so I heard everybody just respects him around campus, around Waco, especially on the team. Other coaching staff is really respected as well. So I heard great things about him.
Seems like an awesome guy.
Talk about our quarterback at Baylor. Tell us what you see, strengths and weaknesses. What does he have to do in this game to beat OU?
He can't turn the ball over. He's a really good athlete. He runs really well, throws okay. but he'll underthrow as well as throws, especially on deep balls across the middle. He's allowed to do a lot of interceptions, and especially in our close games, like the reason they've been close because of the turnovers, like allowing other teams to get the ball back and score. And so, like, if he can take care of the ball, like, I think we have a much better chance of winning.
Well, folks, you heard it from Brady Patterson as he's on campus and going between classes, and I think we're interrupting his lunch hour. What kind of tests you got this week?
Calculus test tomorrow, and then a chemistry test on Wednesday.
He's got 17 hours next semester.
I don't miss it.
He's got, what do you have next semester? You got
a bunch of different stuff.
Computer science,
physics,
engineering, calculus too.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's crazy. I'm like, what? So that's why I got a liberal arts degree. So.
All right, score prediction.
I think 31-27 Baylor.
Let's go.
Come on.
Let's go.
Sick 'em. All right.
Yep.
Well, let's see what happens. Follow him on Twitter, folks. It's at BJ Patterson 15, and it'll be an amazing follow on Twitter. You can also follow Tim Yeager at Tim Yeager, at Tim_Yeager, and myself at Roger Patterson. All right, buddy. Love you. Hope you have a great day, man.
Bye.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yep.
All right. Tell all your friends.
Sick 'em Bears.
Sick 'em Bears. See you, buddy. Love you.
Searching Out Opportunity, Part 1. This is Roger Patterson with a minute of vision for life. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is how opportunity creates growth in my life. When God has grown me the most, it's been through opportunity. Doors open, and opportunity presents itself, and that's when I need to know where to set my foot. Proverbs 25:2 states, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings." There's an old poker term called playing it close to the vest. The idea is that the poker player doesn't want to reveal the hand he's holding, so he pulls his cards just a little bit closer. Sometimes I feel that God does that. So often in our lives, when opportunity presents itself, we're so eager to get from point A to point B that we fail to miss the moments between the destinations. I believe that God is just as interested in the process and journey between these destinations as where we end up. I want to invite you to search out His leading in a community of friends. Come to one of our 2 Interloop locations and find out more at visionforlife.org. That's visionforlife.org.
So we're on Vision for Life Radio today. What a great show we've had so far. Spencer Tillman talking Texans and Patriots and OU Baylor. Brady Patterson, our freshman reporter on the ground at Baylor University, my son. What a great conversation we had with him just for a few minutes there. It's always good to talk to my kid and give him something to do between classes, I guess. Although he's currently in class.
Finals, right?
He's currently in class, and he's texting his mom and I about, can I have this and can I get that? And it's stuff on Amazon. So it's Cyber Monday, I guess. That's the reason. Hey, but here's the question. You're a massive Mavericks fan. It is Monday after, I know we're going to drop this podcast on Wednesday, but it's Monday after the Lakers have just defeated the Mavericks have just defeated the Lakers 114-100. How are you feeling today, man?
10-game winning streak snaps for the Lakers, and it feels good. I woke up today with an extra smile on my face, It always feels good. That game was awesome. It was a early Sunday afternoon game, so it was kind of at an awkward time, so I got to watch bits and pieces of it,
right.
But the Lakers have the best record in the NBA. And so for the Mavericks to be able to go into LA and go into Staples Center and win is huge, right? And so it goes to show that they can play with anybody. They have a chance to win literally any game that they play in. And so that's exciting and that's fun. I know a few weeks ago when the NBA season started, we had the conversation of kind of previewing these 3 teams in Texas and who's the best. And I had optimism, but I didn't think that they would get off to such a great start. And so where they're sitting right now, they are in 4th place in the Western Conference, behind the Lakers, behind the Nuggets, behind the Clippers, which is a great spot to be. I thought they'd be fighting for that 7 or 8 seed. And so, yeah, man, it was an awesome thing to watch.
And you got to go to the Rockets Mavericks game here,
of course.
Last
Sunday,
yeah, about a week ago. So, and so you got Porzingis, you got Doncic, and you said you texted me like, dude, Doncic put on a show.
He is an entertainer, and it's so much fun. Like he is everyone in the national media that's covering the NBA is saying that he is must-watch TV which is just fun. So he's an entertainer, and he makes it look so easy.
Right.
And so he put up 41 points against the Rockets on that Sunday night game.
Wow.
And so it was incredible to watch. They got off to a quick start, and the Rockets just couldn't handle him.
Right. Yeah, they were up
defensively,
15 to 17 points most of the way.
Got off to a quick run to start off the first quarter. Rockets looked sloppy, multiple turnovers the first 3 possessions of the game, made for easy buckets, quick 7-point lead, and then after that they just never looked back. And so, yeah, Luka put up 41 points, had an incredible game. Kristaps Porzingis probably had his best game in a Mavericks uniform that game. He was great at defending the rim and then also hitting some open shots. And then also Tim Hardaway Jr. is kind of that X factor for the Mavericks. If he can have a great game and put up some good numbers, then they're going to be hard to beat. And so, yeah, they scored a ton of points, 137 to win the game. And James Harden and the Rockets just couldn't. They made it interesting kind of towards the end of the third, got it to within 5, but that was a stretch where Lucas sits on the bench, and so as soon as Rick Carlisle,
as I told you, that he was out getting a hot dog when that happened.
Exactly. He was getting some rest, and then I think at like the 8-minute mark in the fourth quarter, they put Luka back in, and I think it was a 5-point game, and then he put it back up to like 20.
So he's putting up LeBron numbers,
yes,
and maybe better than LeBron numbers. What makes this guy so good, man?
He can do it all. He's a 6'7", 6'8" point guard that's strong and big and can muscle through you, but also can step back and hit a three far away from the 3-point line.
Right. So he has a step back like Harden. I mean,
exactly. His game is very Harden-esque, and we mentioned that at the beginning of the season. A lot of the comparisons that he gets nowadays is the 2019 comparison is James Harden, but the old school comparison is a Larry Bird. But he's got way better handles than Larry Bird had. So yeah, it's unbelievable. And yeah, he's putting up not only LeBron type numbers, but historic numbers. And so in the month of November, he averaged 32.4 points per game, 10.3 rebounds per game, and 10.4 assists per game.
Triple-double.
He's the third person ever to average a 30, 10, and 10 triple-double for a calendar month.
At 20 years of age.
At 20 years of age. And Oscar Robertson did it 8 times. He was the triple-double machine back in the day. And then, of course, Russell Westbrook did it a few times in his stint with the Thunder when KD left. And he was just putting up those crazy numbers.
Yeah.
And so at 20 years old, he is joining these elite company, these elite names. Almost it seems like every game he joins some sort of elite company. And so yeah, yesterday Sunday versus the Lakers, he outdueled LeBron. He put up more points and more assists than LeBron, and just had a great game. And there was this moment in the fourth quarter where the Lakers were just trying to do their best to get back into it. They were still down probably 15-16, but still had some time left, maybe 6 minutes or so left in the fourth, and they were doing their best. And Luka has the ball at the top of the key, and LeBron's guarding him. And Luka is very adamant about saying his idol growing up was LeBron James. And they've never beaten the Lakers before with Luka, and he's always said that I'm just like I'm in awe. It's this you show up at 20. He's a kid, right? He's a kid, and all of his life he's seen LeBron on TV, and then all of a sudden you blink and you're on the same court as him, and nonetheless he's guarding you. And you have this moment where he's at the top of the key, and he goes between his legs. He does a step back, and he hits a 3 in LeBron's eye, and the Mavs go up by 20 or 21.
Game over.
And he's just looking at the crowd and saying, "Party's over, Grandpa. Like, I'm here, baby." And it's just this really cool moment that you see him kind of just showing that he is here and he's legit.
Here to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and he is now getting considered that he is one of the top players in the NBA.
Now, we talked when Lance Berkman was with us at our men's event. Guys, that podcast is available, the whole show. It's also on our YouTube channel, Vision for Life Radio YouTube channel, and you can watch Lance and that whole hour and 10-minute interview. What a fun night.
So
Lance talked about, and I was talking to him about this, what makes a guy great in what's the difference between A ball, double A ball, triple A ball, college ball into the majors. And he says it's the guys who can perform over the long haul.
Yeah.
So I think that's still to be determined here.
For sure.
What he does over the stretch of the season before we anoint him the new king.
For sure.
In that regard.
Yeah,
but it's exciting for Mavericks fans.
Oh, it's huge. It's been the last 5 or so years have been rough and tough, and we haven't made the playoffs since I think 2016. And so, but even then, we knew we didn't have a shot. It was just kind of you're giving Dirk his send off, and you're letting him still be the leader of your franchise, even though he's getting older.
Right.
And so it's just been an awkward time of kind of giving him the floor, but also understanding that the future is kind of unknown.
What's his take on Doncic? Have you had a chance to read up on that?
Yeah, so he's actually been kind of quiet. He's enjoying retirement. He's enjoying time with his family. He hasn't been around, but he was actually at that Lakers game in LA, and so he's been to 2 Mavs games this year out of what I think they've played 20 or so. And so he's been to 2, and he's low profile. He doesn't like the spotlight, but what he does say is just incredible to see. And for Dirk, who, 6th leading scorer in NBA history, champion, Hall of Famer, considered one of the best power forwards, one of the best Europeans, is already saying that this Luka guy is way better than he was at 20, which national media is saying that Luka is the best 20-year-old NBA player in history.
Wow.
He's putting up better numbers than LeBron when he was 20, Kobe when he was 20, all these young guys who entered the league a star. He's the best 20-year-old that the NBA has ever seen.
Now, is that because he has the ball in his hands every play? I mean, these guys, I guess Kobe, he was a 2 guard, right?
Yeah.
And LeBron a forward. So is that part of the reason he gets to drive things?
He has a big. The ball's always in his hands. You're exactly right. But still, to do what he's doing, even with the ball in his hands, is still on another level.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because you talked about Lance Berkman and how you climb that baseball ladder from, college baseball to 1A, 2A, AAA, whatever, and that development that happens. Luka's been a pro since he was 14 years old. Like, he started at Real Madrid in Spain at 14 years old. He moved away from home. He moved away from his parents and family and what was comfortable, and he started playing against grown men early in his teenage years. At 14, we're, still middle school A team, 8th grade A team, freshman team, and we're not playing against grown men. And so the development that his maturity has been there from they say he's new and he's up and coming, but he's been playing professional basketball for 6 years now.
That's crazy.
And so it's cool to see that, and that's not the American dream. And I don't know how much of USA basketball will take that under consideration for some of these athletes that know from a quick age that basketball is exactly what they want to do. But at 14, I was at home eating ice cream on the couch in between practices, right? I'm not moving away from my parents into a different country. And so the maturity is there, and he's been doing it for so long. And it's you can see it transforming into the best league in the world.
Yeah. So the West is jam-packed
right
now. And we were talking about, we're trying to catch up with Chris Broussard to talk Lakers Clippers coming up. Rockets put up 158 points yesterday themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they're playing some ball. So it's exciting, and you got to just let it play out.
It's so much fun.
And the NBA season doesn't really begin until Christmas Day, they say, right?
Yeah.
And it goes deep into June with the playoffs and the way it's all set up. And
exactly.
So it should be fun.
We're about a fourth away through the NBA season, but you can tell that there's kind of a clear at least top 6 in the West of these top 6 teams that are kind of ahead of the curve of the other teams in the West. But it's just so much fun now that it's fun watching the Warriors lose. As bad as that sounds, they have just been dominating for too long, and now they're at the bottom of the West, which is crazy. Which they're struggling with injuries.
Well, but next year will be. I mean,
they'll be back.
It's one of those things. It's a reload season.
But at least
watch
for
out.
this season in the NBA, it's been the most fun to watch for a while.
Yeah.
Because there's no clear-cut favorite. Everyone's kind of beating up on everyone, and so it's fun to see that whoever plays has a chance to win the game, and it's not like, the Warriors will win it. We have no idea.
Talk about the East for a minute.
Yeah.
What's going on with the Bucks? What's going on Philly? What do you see happening there?
Yeah, Bucks, Philly, Boston are teams. The Raptors are even still being good without Kawhi, and so, but it seems to be that the Bucks are kind of still the clear-cut favorite for the East, and Giannis is still having MVP type numbers. He's probably leading the MVP race right now to go back to back, and what he can do both offensively and defensively is just unreal. We've never seen. That's why he's the freak, right? The Greek freak, that he can do everything and he's dominant. You can't stop how long and how athletic he is, and he's starting to shoot the 3 a little bit more, which is kind of weird, and he's struggling a little bit. But if he ever adds that to his arsenal, it's game over. He is dominant, and so The East is definitely led by the Bucs. Boston has been good. Kemba Walker has looked good with his addition to Boston, and Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. They have a good little team. Gordon Hayward's hurt right now, but when he comes back, they got a solid squad. Philly has been good. Embiid is dominant.
Right.
Ben Simmons is evolving in his game, starting to shoot a little bit more.
Some threes, right?
He hit one. and NBA Twitter went crazy, which is crazy that we even, I don't know. That blows my mind.
My son Cooper's like, "Hey, Dad." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Do you know Ben Simmons finally hit a three?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I had no idea. And he's like, I'm like, "He's never hit a three." No. Dad. And he's like, pulls it up, shows me on his phone. First time. I'm like,
erupts.
"Hey, there you go."
Erupts. And so they're a good team. And yeah, that's kind of the top of the East right now. And then the Raptors have been really surprising, at least to me. Pascal Siakam has been awesome. He just continues to improve and be the best player for that team, even in Kawhi's departure. And so he's leading that team to do some good things.
He sees his opportunity, man.
Yep.
He's seizing it there. Hey, you know he's passionate about the NBA, folks. This is Tim Yeager, and he loves his NBA. You can follow him on Twitter at Tim_Yeager. And I'd love for you to follow me on Twitter as well at Roger Patterson. And appreciate you tuning in today. Give us a like, give us a review. We love some 5-star reviews there on the Apple Podcast. That helps push the awareness of the radio and the podcast show on further up. Pass it along to your friends if you don't mind, and tag us on social media. We'd appreciate that as well. This is Vision for Life Radio, where faith and sports collide.
We will sing.